Hey YouTube, so today I'm going to do a video on pragerU's video of conservatives are the real environmentalists. Now I'm going to tell you I watched the video once myself and we're going to watch it again a second time. I'm going to make comments throughout it. Hopefully I don't mess up. I'm not really good at the on the ball stuff. I'm not really good at making scripts either and following them, so I suck either way and shitty at editing, but we're going to go forward with this. But a little background on pragerU. I would consider them like a Republican propaganda YouTube site. Now, I definitely consider them propaganda. I consider myself a center-right in the political scheme. I don't think politics is really on a dial that goes from left to right, but it's more of a spectrum. But if I was to place myself for simplicity, I'd definitely say center-right. That being said, I do find their videos entertaining, but I do not like the people of pragerU. I think they are misleading and sometimes basically straight out lie. Excuse me. Now, and I do believe you can lie without saying the lie. Like, if you're getting someone to come to the conclusion you want, knowing that conclusion is false, I think that is a form of lying. Now we're going to go into this video. It's been requested to watch, so we'll go see what happens. Hopefully I don't say and too much. I do it a lot. And let's go.
I hate clean air and water. I don't care how much companies pollute rivers and streams. I don't even like trees. I just care about tax cuts. Who am I? Well, that's easy. I'm a conservative. Or at least I'm a progressive caricature of a conservative.
Sweeping generalization here. That is a stereotype of conservatives. Stereotypes typically are founded in some degree of truth, so there's that. Also, I hate the word caricature. I can't even say it right. I think that might be why I hate it, but I don't like that word.
But the caricature is absurd on its face. Conservatives breathe the same air and drink the same water environmentalists do. Conservatives love taking their kids to the same national parks environmentalists do. In fact, the whole idea of national parks was created by a Republican, Ulysses Grant. The park system was greatly expanded by another Republican, Teddy Roosevelt. And the Environmental Protection Agency was, yes, established by a Republican, Richard Nixon.
Now, I don't know much about any of these things. I do know the Grant fellow, though, was alive in like 1780, so it's kind of silly to group him in with these guys because the Republican Party was a much different party. I don't know if people really realize that, but I mean, like, I don't think anyone associates Abraham Lincoln, which was a Republican, with Donald Trump, which is also a Republican. So there are two different views of the political party now, and each leader is independently different too in the way they waver on certain political views.
He liked clean air too. Conservatives want to conserve things. It's right there in the name. And one of the things
I think that would make a good slogan. I don't know how you'd make that more catchy, but it sounded kind of catchy to me. Although it's slightly misleading. I think it's mostly a coincidence that name's conservative. It's conservative because they wish to conserve political and cultural values. Now that does also include, I think, certain areas and environment to a degree, but it's not I think the focus.
things we want to conserve is our environment, because you can't have a healthy community without a healthy natural environment. That wasn't even hard for me to say, because I believe it. Conservatives love the environment every bit as much as environmentalists do. The question is, what is the best way to protect it? And here's where we have big differences.
I mean, it depends who you're talking about, but I mean, definitely a large portion of conservatives don't, I think, value the environment as a whole the same way that environmentalists do. I think the big difference is environmentalists want the whole environment, the whole world to strive, where most conservatives want just their part to be preserved and be good.
The environmentalists say the best way, the only way, is through massive federal and even international regulations.
I think if you're doing a big generalization, that's true to a fairly good degree. Like I said, for generalizations. So yeah.
Conservatives say the best way to protect the environment is by protecting property rights and encouraging innovation.
I think both sides think that. It's kind of silly to say just conservatives want that.
Safer, more efficient power, nuclear, geothermal, biomass, anything that generates energy at a price consumers want.
I like how I grouped two of the less favorable ones with one favorable one. I mean, I don't know. I guess they are cleaner. I don't know much about what's cleaner. I'm not going to pretend to be knowledgeable in those areas.
And can afford to pay. To the extent that government gets involved in conservation, say protecting wildlife, it should get involved at the most local level possible, since the farmer, forester, or fisherman in Oregon knows a lot more about his environment than some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. or Brussels. So how can
Now, to point that out, I actually agree with that. You're going to need a lot of support and control and whatever restriction laws placed on the local level to truly benefit. That being said, and plus it's the responsibility, I think, more than anyone else. That being said, often a lot of these environmental issues cross boundaries, and it can't be helped. You can do the best in your area, but if the guy on the other side is doing horrible, it's going to affect you, and in some cases greatly. And it's silly to pretend that's not the case. So you do need some degree of federal or bigger oversight on these things, especially the more it affects the others. That's the thing. It's like a chain of events for a lot of these things.
we tell which way works best? Let's examine the historical record. Today, and for the last century, the worst environmental offenders have been big, repressive, socialist governments. This was
I don't know how he's defining socialist. Like I've noticed in pragerU videos, they're very broad with the term socialist.
true in the last century, and it's true now. China, for example, pumps roughly twice as much carbon into the air each year as the United States, even though the U.S. economy is almost 60% larger than China's. And how do those international agreements fare at protecting the environment? Not too well, it turns out. When President Trump announced his intention to pull the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord, environmentalists warned of imminent disaster. Yet a year later, it turned out that the United States led the world in reducing carbon emissions. It did so without surrendering its national sovereignty. Moreover, Canada, the EU, and China, all signatories to the Paris Accord, not only failed to live up to their commitments, but increased their annual carbon emissions. The EU released an additional 40 million tons of carbon dioxide into the air that year. China, a whopping 120 million additional tons, all while wagging their fingers at Uncle Sam. Here's what you won't hear from.
Now, that was a really big section we just watched, but to kind of try to group it all together into one thing is I tried to do some looking up on the numbers they used to confirm or deny anything. Honestly, I just got more confused, so I can only present to you what I understood from what I digested, so this could be wrong. They're looking at the amount they've stopped emitting into, like the quantity of what they've emitted is larger, like they've lowered that more, but by percent, I think they're less. Like from what I read, Germany lowered theirs by 12% after the last term, but the U.S. lowered theirs by 6%. But 6% for U.S. turned out to be like 40 times what Germany was or whatever. So it depends on how you like manipulate those numbers to get a more favorable outcome. Like if you lower it so little, at some point it gets harder and harder to lower, right? That being said, I don't know if that's an excuse for Germany. So all I know is pragerU typically does manipulate their information, so I don't fully understand that. Now I'm Canadian, they use Canadian there. Depending on what province you are, they are more progressive and better with the environment. Like I live in New Brunswick, and our environment stuff is much better than Alberta. In fact, I'm pretty sure Alberta and Quebec, Alberta, Ontario, and BC make up pretty much the majority of our emissions, where the rest of the country makes up hardly anything. And I think that's mostly due with population density, and that may actually make China look better, where they're saying that China had such poor stats. Well, they have like more than 1 billion people, I'm pretty sure, in their country, and the U.S. has like 300 million. So it's hard to be comparing a lot of these things. That doesn't mean they're incorrect in this. I'm just saying I don't know the information appropriately, and I think the biggest reason that Trump got a lot of backlash for pulling out of the Paris Accords is because this is the goal they're trying to set, and obviously most of the countries struggle to hit that. That's just what they're saying you have to hit if you want to save the environment, which I don't 100% agree with either, but I don't know the science behind it. I have to rely on the scientists and peers that I think are credible, their information, and despite me wanting to go and disagree with them, I have to assume that they know better than me.
From your neighborhood Greenpeace volunteer. The left favors big government solutions not because it's better for the environment, but because it's better for leftism. Take a look at the Green New Deal, an environmental proposal embraced by virtually every major progressive in America. Forget for a moment the impracticality of a plan that would outlaw most forms of American energy and cost $93 trillion. Much of the proposal has nothing to do with the environment. Socialized medicine, reparations for historical wrongs, and a jobs guarantee program are just a few of the items on its wish list. What do socialized medicine?
I don't know much about what he's talking about, but people don't group things like that together. Like if you're an environmentalist and you're dealing with just the environment issues, you don't group healthcare and slavery and the job thing together. Like they're their own issues. That's just like saying that conservatives, the same conservatives in the same deal, want to make the United States a Christian country and make no taxes for businesses. Like that's just not the truth. Like if they're a Christian, they're going to want the more Christian thing, and if they're more of a business person, they're going to want the more business thing. It is incorrect to group those together. Like they don't synergize. Like they don't interact the same way. I think that's a poor way of looking at that, and he's trying to make it look like they come as one package, but they don't.
Medicine and reparations for slavery have to do with the environment?
You don't.
Well, nothing. But for supporters of the Green New Deal, that's okay, because their primary goal is increasing government power well beyond anything we've ever seen in America. They need this power, presumably, to save us from ourselves.
I think that's a true mentality that a lot of people on the left side of the spectrum want. Although you can see that manifest on the right side in some ways, just not as much. Like the right typically want larger military and larger police force, which is an overarching type of federal power, right? But yeah, the left do want more management typically to tell you how to live right. Like difference between free speech and like censored speech. A lot of people want a censored type speech now on the left side. Not everyone, of course, but they want to stop like hate speech. But if you stop hate speech, then you don't have free speech, right? Like it's what is it called? Like a catch-22? Like you're screwed either way. You give up hate speech, well then you give up the chance to spread ideas. But if you let people spread any idea, then you have the chance of spreading hateful ideas. You just have to assume you in society is strong enough to repel those hateful ideas. I am a supporter of free speech for sure.
In contrast, conservatives are all about innovating our way to a cleaner environment without depriving anyone of their freedom. Take, for example, that monster of all green monsters, horizontal drilling for oil and gas, also known as fracking. The left demonizes fracking even though it actually makes the environment cleaner, the country richer, and now independent of Middle Eastern oil, something thought impossible a decade ago. How does it make the environment cleaner? By releasing up to 50% less carbon dioxide into the atmosphere than coal.
Okay, that doesn't make it cleaner. That just makes it cleaner than coal. But it doesn't make the environment cleaner. That is a silly way to say that for sure.
And since it's also cheaper, people are happy to buy it. Not because government forces them to, but because it saves them money. By the way, according to a Harvard study, fracking is safe and improving all the time. Yep, innovation that produces abundant, clean energy at a fair price without infringing on my freedom. That works for this conservative. You'd think it would work for anyone who cares about the environment and people. So let me repeat. I love clean air and water. And I don't own even a single share of Exxon. I'm Michael Knowles, host of The Michael Knowles Show for Prager University.
My final thoughts. They didn't really show any real information there. They tried to they basically just tried to bash on the left and environmentalists instead of showing a lot of real information. Like, they need to come up with real plans on how to protect the environment, not just saying, oh, you can frack instead of using coal because that's better. The problem is that yes, it is safer, I'm pretty sure, than coal. So if we had to choose from the two devils, it's better to choose fracking, which I in fact supported in my province when they tried to do it but get defeated. But the idea is that if there's a threshold we have to meet to stop emissions, if going from 50% down still doesn't hit that target, then it doesn't matter. We still need to go lower. What we should be doing, my personal opinion on going through the environmental issue, because in Canada the whole fuel thing's a big deal. We have the oil sands, is we should be using the oil sands and taking as much of the income as possible, if not all of it, all the profit I mean, and putting it towards clean energy. So that way we can make the transition happen and happen faster and good, so that we can become unreliant or not reliant on the oil sands anymore. But until we get there, we need the oil sands. You can't destroy a country's economy just for the environment. And then you're like, well, if we lose the environment, then people can't live, and that sucks. And I agree actually with that. I don't know what to say. I don't know. I'm personally at a moral standstill on that. So I don't know. You can't let your country die, and you also can't let the people die. So where's the happiness? There has to be some middle ground. And I think that's the real goal we should be having. I don't know what the answer to the states is, but I'll just leave it there. I probably sound retarded. I'm sorry, everybody. Hopefully I made this somewhat entertaining for you, though. And have a good day.